Hi everyone, welcome to the fourth session of the Art Lounge Talks. My name is Chandra Saswari and I am an artist and an art writer. Today with us we have Mc Naught Davis, who is a friend of mine. He is a visual artist, a photographer, a filmmaker. He does a lot of things and he has had very cool experiences in life, which I'm very excited to talk to him about. So we are going to add him to this live session and find out what he has to say. Okay, Ian has sent a request. Wait, I have added him. Accept. Okay. Hi. Hey Ian, how are you?
Oh, how are you doing?
Good to see you. It's been a little more than a year.
It doesn't feel like it at all. It feels like I'm just bumping into you in the corridor.
I know. Another day at a GC somewhere in London. Awesome. So Ian, I'm sorry.
Video effect with the wind in your hair. Like it looks.
Oh yeah, it's a fan that yeah, I'm making it a little Bollywood, but also it's a fan that I have to keep so that it doesn't get too hot, Okay, so before anything else, I'm gonna introduce you to the world so that they know all of the cool things that you've done, and then we're gonna go into the details. Okay,
Right.
so Rabia's writing lol. Okay. Mc Naught Davis is a South African visual artist who specializes in photography, filmmaking, and mixed media art. Ian was awarded Achieving Scholarship and holds an MA in photography with distinction from Goldsmiths, University of London. After having worked as a features writer for magazines in Cape Town, he pursued a career as a freelance photographer, which included traveling extensively across Africa, solo on a bicycle, which is really cool, for 3 years. 3 years, right? Am I right when I say that?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Roundabout.
Okay. And Ian has worked as a photojournalist in Georgia and in several former Soviet states, including Ukraine, Georgia, Armenia, Kazakhstan, etc. His photographs have been published in Vice, BBC News, GQ, Men's Health, as well as in media outlets in Italy, the Netherlands, China, Portugal, and Russia. His work has been exhibited at the Somerset House Gallery in London, as well as galleries in Rome, Bologna, Dubai, Oxford, etc. And he's produced several short films, music videos, and a television commercial. That's very cool. His work is largely driven by analog techniques of image making, including 19th century print methods, hand-drawn animation, and film photography. And Ian has many interesting experiences under his cap, which we will talk about now. Again, hey Ian. Okay, let's get started with the question. So Ian, tell us about your early life in South Africa, what your education and interests were, and did you have creative interests since a young age?
Yeah. So my grandmother was a painter, and so she painted landscapes and still life. And so I think what helped is that it definitely wasn't weird in our family to have an artist. I think
Right.
sometimes in your family there's that one artist and it's like a little strange or something like that. So
The black sheep.
yeah. So she was a full-time painter. She had a studio.
Amazing.
So it was very kind of normalized that you'd paint and draw and stuff like that.
Right. Right.
I took art in high school and I got terrible marks. I remember getting 7%.
Can't believe that. 7%.
Yeah, but admittedly,
That's amazing. That's great. That's cool.
I was completely sort of put off art, because of that. It was very sort of like harsh criticism. I think I was like 13.
Was that at a very young age, like when you were in school?
So in primary school, it was never a problem. I always sort of enjoyed painting. It's not obviously that serious thing, but I do remember getting quite harsh criticism and obviously deciding at that point that I'm obviously not good at this. And
Yeah.
it was enough only in the year that I met you that I started drawing again.
Wow.
Yeah. So I mean, we can talk about it later, but that was a real kind of creative breakthrough.
That's amazing.
But yeah,
Wow.
I always wanted to be a photographer since I was about 11 years old. And
Right.
yeah, I think it was just growing up in a place where I see one of the comments there is of the teacher who would have given me that harsh criticism over there from Alex.
Really?
We were,
Wow.
yes. So
Okay.
yeah, and,
But photography, I mean, how did you, so did you see someone else who was, who was a photographer? How did you get into photography?
so
When you were young, yeah.
so my mother worked as a radio presenter, and she had
Wow.
there was this camera, like you could phone in and win a camera. And so I phoned in, but then they had this policy that you're not allowed, you can't have family members winning, competitions. And so then sort of halfway through, I lied about who I was, but it was very obvious that it was her son on the phone. Yeah, so the only
Yeah,
person
yeah, yeah.
cousin's name. And so, but yeah, I eventually won this little point and shoot camera, and figured
Amazing.
out this is what I want to do. And so there was a bit of my career doing other stuff for a while, and then I realized I was kind of moving away from what I really wanted to do, and then yeah, carried on with that.
Okay, so you told me your education was in psychology and journalism, and then you
Yeah,
also lived in Australia where you herded cattle. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Because that is a very unusual experience.
no, it was
How
quite
did that
a
happen?
career change. So my undergrad degree was in psychology and English, and then I did a postgrad in journalism, and the idea behind that was to get into photojournalism. And
Okay.
so studied journalism, and I had taken out a student loan to study, and then I realized that the salary I was on, the journalist salary, was just never going to like cover that. And so
Right.
I decided that I would have to do some manual labor in some first world country for a bit, and
Okay.
then pay off the loan. And the initial plan was to work on a wine farm in Australia, like pick grapes and do a harvest. Then
Okay.
in organizing it, somebody had mentioned that there was a shortage for people to herd cattle on horses, which sounds amazing. So, basically, you want to be a
Wow.
cowboy. And so I said yes, and kind of lied on
So
my,
cool.
saying that I could ride a horse, but I picked it up eventually. Yeah, it was a big kind
I'm
of
sure. Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
time, because it was
Very cool.
after I worked a very kind of predictable job. So it was after 2 years of working a kind of
Okay.
found job that I got to do
Right.
something very
Right.
yeah.
Ian, that's very interesting. So you're also a writer, and you write extremely well. I honestly was blown away when I read those articles you shared with me. You've written for well-known men's magazines in the past, such as GQ, Men's Health, etc. So what are the perks and challenges of having what we call a desk job and of pursuing writing as a career?
Yeah, so the perks is an interesting question, because I found that I sort of tend to look back on that that time and kind of like, oh, this was lame, sitting at a desk all day and
Mm-hmm.
not out and playing, because I think naturally quite restless. Um, but I did actually I learned a lot from those times. I think I
Uh-huh.
probably stayed a kind of a year too long. There's this idea of getting a certain amount of work experience, but I mean, I think if you're getting uninspired, then
Right.
it's not. But the perk, to answer your question, would be learning how to find something that's essentially an uninteresting subject and making it more
Mm-hmm.
exciting. So I was
Making
writing
it
for Men's Health. A lot of that was writing about how to get rock hard abs and biceps. I was basically lying for 3 years, because what? And I Wikipedia'd the bicep a lot, but
Okay.
the skills I learned there was trying to find an angle, you know, to make something
Right.
more.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And
But sorry, I'm cutting you off. But was the stability of that job, firstly, I don't know why my screen is blurred. I don't know how to fix it. But I was saying, was this stability? Yeah, it has gone out of focus, but I don't know how to fix it. That's the problem.
yeah,
Someone's
put out
taking
a
a camera.
photo.
Okay, it's done. It's done. Awesome. It's fine now, right? Thank you, Mahima, for pointing that out. Okay. So I was saying, but was the stability? So you're saying that the stability of the desk job though wasn't enough for you to stay there, right? You're a restless person who wanted to do different things. That's what eventually happened. Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
I think, like, if I look back at my 3 years working at one magazine and 2 years at another, I can't think of anything that I did, you know, beyond working. And then, you know, you have these occasional things you do on weekends and stuff, but I
Right.
you know, I didn't feel myself growing.
Okay. Okay, so I read in the article that you shared with me that your bicycle is your most prized possession. It has taken you to over 20 countries across Africa where you traveled for, okay, I've written 6 months. I'm sure it's more than that, right? So we would love to know more about this spectacular journey. Tell us everything about it.
So the idea of cycling in up Africa had always been this plan. I'd read a book about it years earlier, or I read a few about it, and it always had been like, well, you know, maybe one day I'll do that. And at the time, I was working as a features writer, and this thing where I would volunteer for NGOs on the weekend. So I would photograph for a couple of NGOs, and then in my spare time would go on these missions and photograph things. It was, in particular, it was a medical NGO called Operation Smile, which fixes up children with and does sort of facial surgery. And so I'd been doing that for about 2 years or so, and realized that if I really do photography, I'd have to make a kind of clean break. And then I also had this kind of dream of cycling up Africa, and so I figured, you know, if I'm going to do the break anyway, and this is something I want to do, the plan would be to turn this into a photo project. And I mentioned earlier, I was on one of my very long lunch breaks.
And Ian, so let's just ask everyone, can you all hear both of us clearly? Because I feel like, yes, you are frozen and your voice is lagging a bit. Your audio is lagging a little bit. Can anyone tell us if you can hear us properly? Ian, are you there? Okay, but I'm clear, right? Okay, I'm gonna add him again. This live sessions that the internet isn't that great, so we're gonna get him on again. I'll send him a request. Thank you, Ravia. I'm going to find him. How do I find him? Okay. Invite. Let's see. I've sent him an invite and he should be able to see it, hopefully. Okay, let's wait for a few moments because I'm sending him a request, but it says he isn't able to join. So maybe he is connected to some different internet or something like that. Ian, can you tell us what's happening maybe in this chat box? Okay, he's here. But so far I can see a black screen. Ian, are you there? Okay,
Hello?
hi. I can see you now. It's still lagging a little bit. He's frozen. What to do? Ian, can you hear me? If you can, just type something here. Can you? Hi, Ian. Ian, can you hear me? Slow-mo, guys. Enjoy this video in slow-mo. Ian, can you hear me? I don't know what to do right now. Okay, so are you saying something or are you not saying something? Because I can't see. I can just see some very slow-mo visuals of your face. Okay, Ian, if you can hear me, just say something. This is going to be the entertaining part of the video. Oh, he can't see me. Oh, he left. Should we start the session or should we wait for him? I don't mind waiting. Okay, I'm gonna ask him. Is your internet working fine? Thank you, Mahima. We'll wait, but I hope Ian can figure out what the issue is. I'm wondering if I close this window. Okay, Ian has sent a request. Okay. Accept.
Hey!
Hi, Ian.
Oh, amazing.
Yay, it's working! Finally!
That is South African internet for you. So, on behalf of my country, sorry about that.
Pakistani internet isn't much better, so I'm glad this is still going strong from my end.
I'm just glad I've got electricity. So, yeah, this is...
Yeah. You didn't have to light those candles that you were talking about.
I do there as backup.
Oh, you have them. Okay. So, wow, Mahima. We were talking about your bicycle trip across Africa.
Yeah, so I was taking this long lunch break, and suddenly this guy appears on a bicycle, and I had always decided to go on this bicycle trip, but I didn't actually own a bicycle, and I thought that if I resigned, then it would force me to find a bicycle, but because there would be no sort of other way to do it.
No other way.
But it has to be a certain kind of bicycle, because it's got to be a half mountain bike, half road bike kind of thing, which they don't have in South Africa. And I was on this lunch break, and suddenly this guy drives past. And he had this huge beard and looked pretty tired. and he'd cycled from Turkey all the way through Africa on this bicycle.
Okay.
And he
Wow.
arrived in Cape Town, and he was just like, he'd had enough. He was just so
He was done.
he was done. He said he just missed his girlfriend, and he wanted to go home. And he basically, I said, well, can I buy your bicycle? And he like sold it to me on the spot, you know. And it had like
it's kind of like one of those things where they say one man's trash is another man's treasure. That's exactly what happened, right? He was getting rid of his thing, and that's exactly what you wanted. Ian, you manifested that in your life.
Yeah, exactly. We were talking about that not too long ago.
Yeah.
So this, real kind of synchronicity, and I started cycling, and this is obviously after resigning, and I found it was like a real life-changing time, and I struggled to sort of put it into words, but it was it was this kind of unraveling and unwinding of my kind of, I don't know, routine that I was in. It took me about a month to sort of cycle out of, it forced me to do things.
Took you a month to cycle out of where?
Well, just out of the sort of routine and the kind of mindset that
Right.
Perhaps a very like concerned about risk and worried about I don't know, all sorts of things. But what I loved about the cycle is that it simplified my life so much. You know, you could only I was carrying about 50 kilograms worth of stuff, and that was like all that you needed. And then later on, I started getting less and less. And
50 is still quite a bit.
Yeah, and I felt that after a while, and so I started cutting down.
Okay. Wow.
You have this freedom of not knowing where you're going to sleep that night, but also that restriction of that you can only cycle like 120 kilometers in a day. And so there is that excitement of there are all these possibilities, but there's also a limit on that. And that is something that I'm only learning about now. It's basically the creative process. So when you start making meaningful art or meaningful creative projects, there's that unknown, but also limit, you know. So, you know, you have materials, finances, the kind of inspiration, but you also have the unknown. So it's
exactly. But Ian, how did you decide? In the sense that, did you plan your entire journey beforehand, or was it going with the flow? Like, how did you decide which country you were going to next, sort of thing?
Yeah. So that's a really good question, because in the beginning, because I mean, I had sort of 3 years of planning this trip. You know, when I was bored at work, when I was writing about it.
Wow.
I would sort of like plan, like, you know, what part of the country I'm going to cycle through, and I planned it to the day. You know, so you know, the idea was to cycle to the bottom of Africa and then, you know, work my way up, and it was really kind of freeing when that didn't go to plan, where you know, schedule your life and plan everything. And I started listening to other people suggesting to go other places or to take these like different paths, and eventually, I think in the beginning it might have been an ego thing to try and cycle as much and as quickly as possible. And then later on, I realized that, you know, I could just, like, there was a time where I parked the bicycle and then I walked up along the coastline for 3 weeks, sort of camping in the bushes along the way.
Wow. Yeah.
Because I realized I didn't actually have to, no, this wasn't like some world record time setting thing. And so it's great having these plans and just not sticking to them, you know.
And you look very different then too, right? You had a beard, and you had a tent, and you you didn't have to worry about shaving your face. You didn't have to worry about anything. The concerns were very different at that point. Yeah.
And level hygiene. Yeah. And I think it also scared a lot of people away. So if anybody wanted to rob me, I think they were like, whoa, this guy.
Yeah, yeah. But during this time, you were also you had your camera with you, so that was the point of it, right? That you would also photograph
Yeah.
things that you saw. That
Yeah.
was part of
It,
it. Okay.
it worked out well because
Mm.
in a lot of ways, the bicycle it wasn't just a form of transport, but it was also an icebreaker, because people would stop and say like,
Mm.
what are you doing? Like, this is ridiculous.
Right, right.
And we would get talking, and a lot of times they would, you know, invite me home, or we would start up a conversation. And
Wow.
something I did notice was, I ended up staying with a lot of strangers, you know, people that I'd never met, or having these conversations with people, and the level or the depth of the conversations were really interesting, because I found that a lot of people are carrying these secrets, or these things that are heavy on them, and then suddenly here's this weird guy with a ridiculous ginger beard, like cycling on a bicycle, and you're not going to see him again. And so people
Yeah,
would
yeah.
tell really personal stuff, and there was no real small talk. And so there
Wow,
was
wow.
sort of fast
I think
tracking into the more
I think you're
intense.
right about the fact that when you think that you're not going to meet someone again, you're just more honest with them and you're more open with them. But with people we know, we tend to sort of contain information, not reveal the whole picture and all that. So
Exactly.
that's quite an interesting. That's amazing. And
Yeah.
I'm sure that during this experience you have, you know, you met some very interesting, lovely people, maybe some strange people too. And then I also read in one of your articles that there was a situation where you had to deal with a live tiger or something. Was this during the same trip?
Right.
Can you share some anecdotes from your
So,
travels?
um, so I'd worked my way up to Ethiopia, and by the
Mm,
time I was in Ethiopia, I just, it was kind of like that moment that I told you about, where I had planned everything, and in about 3 weeks of cycling, I just kind of let go of the plans. And so by the time I'd reached Ethiopia, I
mm,
just traveled more. You know, I just, you know, like, there was just um, so much more that I wanted to see. And I thought,
yeah.
you know, I wasn't going to carry on through Ethiopia, because there were I'd have to go through South Sudan and Sudan, and visa issues and security were a bit complicated. But I ended up in Turkey, and when I was in
Wow.
Turkey, uh, at that point I wasn't on a bicycle, so I cycled there. I mean, I took a plane there. But the
Okay,
idea,
so you were done with your cycling bit of the experience by then. Okay.
and I had also
Awesome.
noticed that I wanted to photograph people, and a lot of the time with cycling, you're thinking about where you're going to camp that night. So at around like 2 o'clock in the afternoon, you're thinking about, you need to find a place with bushes and trees where you can sort of hide,
Yeah.
and and you got to do that just as nightfall happens. And so I missed
Right.
out really good light, you know, because I'd be so focused on finding a place to hide and
Yeah.
sleep. Um, and I also realized that I enjoyed photographing people more. And so then
Mhm.
I started traveling on public transport a lot more, because that's slower and easier to build connections, instead of cycling past places the whole time. Um,
Right.
uh, what's
Right.
your question?
Right.
Oh, yes, the tiger,
Wow.
right. So,
Yeah, the
so
tiger.
then I ended up in Turkey. And when I was in Turkey, I heard that in Georgia, which is next to Turkey, and I knew very little about Georgia at the time. But I heard that there was a flood, and the flood had happened. It was a flood because of bad city planning, and there had been this basically a flash flood that had happened in the zoo. So the zoo had broken open, and
Wow.
I saw this picture of a hippo in the streets, and in Africa, the hippo is this. It kills the most people. It's actually a really dangerous animal.
Oh, right.
And,
Right.
and there's this picture of this old grandma kind of like pushing this hippo, and I thought this place is insane. I need to get here.
Yeah.
And anyway, so like tigers had escaped as well, and there were hyenas and penguins running about the street, and I thought this kind of
Wow.
National Geographic
Wow.
moment. And
Yeah.
so I went
Yeah.
to find the tiger, and the tigers escaped. I think there's two of them out there. But it introduced me to Georgia, and later on
Wow.
I lived in a few other countries, but
Yeah.
places, Georgia was just the weirdest and the most fascinating place. And when I eventually stopped
Why was it
traveling,
weird? Sorry. Okay, you can answer that later.
I, I don't think weird is like the best way of describing it, but
Like,
you know, photographically you want to be around the most sort of interesting place, and it was just this mix of old and new and Orthodox Christian and Soviet and sort of kitsch and medieval in some ways, and just
right.
incredibly beautiful. And there is this. I felt incredibly foreign there, and I think that's a strength because you see the world like you're a 5-year-old, you know, and
Yeah.
you know, more
Yeah.
exciting, and something
Yeah.
that I do struggle here, and it is something that I want to improve, is just being so used to the weirdness of South Africa, because South Africa is super weird. Um, uh, but it's so normal for me, you know, that
Yeah.
everyday
Yeah.
weirdness stand out.
Real
And
things.
so,
Yeah. 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 So how did you get to the Soviet countries then?
so after my first sort of travel, which took about 3 years, I ended up back in South Africa, and then I had decided, let me go, let me live in a different place. And so I thought, let me move to Georgia, relocate there, just because it seemed
Wow.
this really.
Yeah.
And so Georgia is one, like there's still plenty of drama there, but it's one of the more stable places in that area. And so from Georgia, I was able to do different stories like the war in Ukraine, or covering stories in Armenia and stories in Kyrgyzstan, but to have a bit more stability in Georgia, and to kind of point out this theme again. I found the most kind of productive, or the most sort of inspired I was, is with this blend of certainty and uncertainty. So with Georgia, you know, the country's not going to explode, but there is enough uncertainty to be stimulating, and I could go to some of
Okay.
the more unstable countries, and
Yeah.
not necessarily there, but have Georgia as a
Awesome. Awesome. Um, Ian, I saw some nice compliments you've been getting in the chat.
uh,
Okay. So
the
Ian,
Prince
your
Charles.
sound is a little bit unclear.
You know what I can do? I can switch my
Uh-huh.
modem on and off. That worked last time.
Okay. Do that if you can.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. I'm sure everybody would.
I'm going to close the
What?
window. I'm going to close the window. Okay.
Okay, but I think the sound is not, it's possible that it's because of the internet, because it comes in bursts, so we can hear you and then it goes, and then we can hear and then it goes. So it's up to you. You can try whatever.
I'm going to try the
We're all
window.
waiting, so
The internet thing.
you
Okay.
go with what your instinct tells you. Do whatever your instinct tells you. Yeah, okay.
Okay, bye.
Okay, see you. Okay, pause, guys. Let's wait for a few moments. Thank you, Alex. You can also watch the IGTV on Instagram. I'm going to be putting it up as a video on Instagram and YouTube. Thank you for joining. For whoever's joined, we're just waiting for Ian. He's just restarting his internet or something because it was a bit unclear. So thank you for waiting. Okay, that means he's restarted it because we can see what's happening.
Okay.
Okay, we're gonna add him back now. Ian's having some internet problems which we were trying to resolve, so he sent a request again. I have accepted it, so it should be working. Hi again.
We're back.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, hopefully it's gonna work better now. Okay. So Ian, did we complete the last question? We did, right? Okay. So you often put yourself voluntarily in physically challenging situations. Is there any reason for this, and what has this taught you?
So there are, more dangerous or risky positions that I have put in, whether that's something, cycling through Africa, and conflict reporting on or reporting on kind of riots and that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But they are there are things I wouldn't tell my mother, basically. But they're a lot more calculated than it sounds, and I don't think I would do it if the risk was. I mean, I really kind of think about it.
Yeah.
But something I am interested in. I've been working on this project on masculinity. And so it's the kind of project that I've had on the kind of back burner for, I don't know, about 8 years or so. And so I am interested in this idea of masculinity, also having worked at men's magazines and seeing perhaps a bit more, more of the superficial side of
Right.
masculinity. And one of the traits of modern masculinity is that there isn't an initiation ceremony that the modern man goes through.
Right.
I don't think transition period where you're like, okay, I'm a man now. Like you go through something.
Yeah.
Like I remember probably about 12 years old, and then in this clothing shop. And always shopping in the boys section, and then one day things didn't fit, so then I went to like the man section, and there's like the small man t-shirt, and I put it on. I'm clearly a man now.
Yeah.
There was no moment of that. I don't think it's just me. I think that for most people now, and I'm not saying I know an answer of it, but it has been something that I've been thinking about in the back of my head while this project. And I think there is this desire to go through some physical hardship, because there's a lot that that you can learn through it, in the way that simplifies and sharpens it. And so I mean, I do remember on covering the Ukraine, in eastern Ukraine, basically what's happening there is that there's been this ongoing conflict for the last number of years. I almost felt guilty for enjoying my time there, you know, because what it did was it just sort of sharpened everything. Like, always not get bombed or not put your foot on a, and
Wow.
you know, things were just very, very simple. And I think naturally I'm a very sort of scattered and kind of distracted person, and you know, there's all these sort of kind of things going on, and suddenly all of that changes, and it's, you know, whether it is photographing more intense scenes, or if it is something like, you know, living in a tent and cycling, you know, traveling by a bicycle, there's something about how it sharpens your life and or your kind of current existence that I find quite sort of, I don't know if addictive is the right word, but it's very more life affirming, and yeah.
So, Ian, what draws you towards a subject and makes you want to photograph it?
I think every, and I'm thinking more about the documentary work that I've been doing as opposed to the like the more like experimental work. But every picture is a self-portrait, you know, and that is how you are feeling, or what stands out. And I could be photographing, I don't know, nuns in Georgia, and find something that I relate to in that nun, you know. And everything is, and I'm talking about when you're photographing things without being given a brief or instruction, doing it for yourself. And which are most that I shown people. But it's me connecting with whatever's happening in that picture. And how do you ask this question? Because it ties into, you know, why do you do these things, in your previous question, and that is because with something like the bicycle trip or photographing conflict, the highs are very high and the lows are very low, but you are very aware of your, and so you are, even if they're low emotion, you're very in touch with what's going on. And maybe you felt this as well, being under the sort of academic pressure, and then there's COVID and stuff like that, but you are just aware of what's going on. There isn't that sort of numbing routine. And so I think when you're in that state and you're also photographing, you know, I'm aware of something that's either lacking or what I'm feeling, and then I see it in something else, and then I connect to that. So yeah,
brilliant.
It's the self-awareness that these more kind of stripped bare moments bring.
Okay.
I've been seeing that.
Okay.
So I've noticed that whenever it goes out of focus, it is when you drink your tea. So if you drink your tea, it's going to focus. No, try it now.
Okay.
We'll test it. I think it works.
It worked. It's clear now. Brilliant. Okay, so now let's talk about chevening. A lot of people have gotten in touch recently to ask me about the scholarship. And for people who don't know, Ian was a chevening scholar, and that's how I met him. I met him in London, and we lived in the same accommodation, which had a very interesting name. It was called Good Enough College. And yes, that's an actual name. That was the name of the founder of the college, if I'm not wrong. Ian, can you hear me? Ian, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, but I could see that something was happening, so I stopped. But okay, let's wait for a few moments.
Okay, yeah. can hear you fine.
You can hear me fine, but you can't see me, yeah?
But I can't see you.
Oh no.
Can you see me?
Okay, because I can see you very well. Okay, so let's see. You can hopefully hear me. So a number of people asked me
Yeah.
about the Cheap Scholarship, and I thought we'd tell people about it. Because maybe not many people know that it's for each and every field, and you and I are from creative fields, right? So can you tell us of how the Chevening Scholarship happened and how your experience was as a Chevening Scholar? Like, how did you plan on? Did you plan on
Sure.
applying for a while? Was it by fluke? Everything. Tell us everything.
So I'd heard about it. A friend of mine did it, and I applied while I was in Georgia. And I didn't get it the first time, and then I applied again, and then I got it.
Okay.
And what I think a lot of people, perhaps there's more of a sort of stereotypical idea of the Chevening scholar, and I don't think you and I fitted into that. And I think maybe this is me being diplomatic, but
True though.
I don't think a lot of people know that it is also for art and creative studies as well. I think it attracts a lot of politics and business people.
Oh, so many politicians, people studying international relations and law and all of those things.
Yeah.
But
I think that there's a kind of a quota that they have, of that they don't fill everyone, and that they have got spaces for people like us.
Yes.
And so
how was your experience as a Chevening scholar? Sorry, go on.
Just to touch on the on the applications.
Yeah.
With the experience and when you apply for these scholarships, there are a lot of questions about leadership, and it is, I think, easy to do that in the field of law or politics, but in the fields of art, not really. You don't sort of have hierarchies and structure, which I love.
Exactly. Yeah.
So in some ways, it actually makes it quite easy for you, because you just have to show that you're excited about something. These are things worked on. It doesn't matter if they like it or not. It's just the fact that you're really into it. And I think there's probably more chance of people getting in than people realize.
Yes.
With that angle.
Absolutely.
So your other question about the achieving experience. I hadn't studied for a long time, and what is helpful about Chevening is that it is for people who have studied, but they've also worked in between studying. I think the minimum is like 2 years or something after studying that you have to work experience. And then the fact that you get to come back to university is I felt really empowering, because there's this energy that you feed off, of I sound old now, but feeding off the youth and the youthful energy.
Exactly.
But there really is this like this sort of like dynamic shared feel of like-minded people. But when you're a student the first time, you obviously have this, but you don't realize that it ends. And so I remember being a student, in my early 20s, and thinking, wow, this is amazing. Life is so good. Like, I don't really do much. And I just like have. But then in 3 years, 4 years time, that ends, and you have to do like grown-up stuff. And so knowing that the student life ends, and having experienced that, really helped me make the most of it. And so I would, just try new things and really use it as a chance to make mistakes and place to experiment with different mediums, try different photographic forms. And I just found that really
this ties into
really,
my
really
next question, which is basically, how did your work develop during your MA at Goldsmiths? you tried hand-drawn animation, film, and new photography techniques, right?
Yeah, that's right. So
Yeah.
it changed so much. I think, before, when I was working as a photojournalist, it was very much working month to month, not knowing where you're going to be, and it wasn't a very dependable year. And I loved the excitement and the subject matter, but it was quite hard to sort of plan my life. So the idea was that I would study to just learn a little bit about things like shooting portraits or film or something, just to have something different. But I ended up really moving away from this idea of that photojournalism has to be perfect, and you've got to make the perfect image that tells a story and is like self-contained.
Right.
And that sort of journalistic pressure, there was no. You have to have very kind of dependable images, and they've got to be objective, and the idea of doing your own thing is just something that's that I learned in my year of studying at Gold, was that you could
Awesome.
experiment and you could try, and just the fact that it really sort of shut down that perfectionist way of. So I
Yeah. Yeah.
I had kind of looked at analog photography as like a massive waste of time, because you send a film image to a uh, oh, it looks like I've frozen. Um,
You can keep talking though. Maybe we
um,
can hear you.
maybe.
Oh no, we can't hear you anymore. Okay, it's good now. Uh, we can
About that.
yeah, it's good now.
Um, so, Shanzi, I forgot what I was saying. Oh yes,
You
I used to think
analog photography.
analog, but it just wasn't efficient enough, and
Mm,
I got rid of that all perfectionistic kind of thinking,
mm,
and looking at the process of something being more important than the actual the product that's made.
right.
And I have strategically put a analog image over here behind me. So
Ooh,
this is a thing
nice. Wow.
which I'll talk to you a little bit later about.
Absolutely. We're
But
going to talk about that too.
yeah,
Fantastic.
it,
So Ian,
yeah. So
oh, go on. Sorry.
I was just saying it was getting rid of that kind of perfectionistic, that's a word, perfectionist thinking, that I learned through studying.
Okay, so you broke free from that during that. Yeah, that's amazing. And so I think both of us we applied for Chevening twice. I also applied before in 2016. I didn't get it then, and then I got it in 2019. Do you have any tips for those applying for the Chevening scholarship from creative fields?
I remember that somewhere online there was a video of questions you might get asked
Mm,
in the chief interview process, and for the life of me I can't remember which one it is, but it is there, and basically it gave all the questions that they asked, which was amazing. And so I had
wow.
planned on to everything. And so that was a huge help. I think in the email that said you're coming for an interview, there was sort of hints about what they might ask,
Yeah.
but there is a video out there is like literally all the questions. So I think
Awesome.
somebody who had been in obviously made that thing, straight away.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay.
I
Awesome.
think what I had to tell people in the interview was that that in art, you don't necessarily have leadership, and my leadership isn't sort of extroverted persona kind of leadership,
Mm,
but it's more my I don't know, sort of stubbornness and ability to work on projects by myself and kind of
right.
take my own initiative.
Right.
And so I kind of, because I'm basically working by myself. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not a leader.
Yeah.
I kind of explained how I was a leader because I worked for myself, and so it was just changing that angle.
Awesome. Yeah.
If you don't, I'd be interested to know what kind of angle did you go for when you had the interview?
I mean, my leadership examples were very small examples. They weren't big examples of me, like leading a team of so many people, stuff like that. But I think, even in my interview, I remember they asked me a question about whether I had ever made a difficult decision in my life or something where I had to make a difficult choice. And I remember speaking about a situation where there was a person in authority, like a teacher of mine, and I was being sort of discouraged from going ahead with an exhibition, I remember. And I just felt that was not the right thing. In the sense that I felt like that wasn't correct. Like I should have been allowed to do that. And it was a tough decision because I was either going against sort of authority. I had to choose between that and between doing what I really wanted because I had prepared for this exhibition. And I did go ahead with the exhibition. And I spoke to the teacher about it, and she wasn't very happy. But I mean, I stood up for myself, sort of a thing. So I gave these kind of examples. Then I remember in the networking question, which apparently they have now, they don't call it networking anymore. They call it building relationships or something like that. So, so then I mentioned this, again, little story of how I had exhibited in a gallery in London. So I knew the owner or whoever, not the owner, the manager. And he asked me to get an artist who shows with that gallery connected to a gallery in Pakistan, and I did that. And then, I mean, it was a very small thing, but even in the career plan question, I was very clear. I was like, I cannot execute anything very major because, and by the way, I sort of critiqued myself, and I realized that the first time I had applied, my career plan was out in the park. I mean, I thought I would do so much. I'd set up my own museum, and I'd set up like a traveling show or something like that, which I realized wasn't actually possible so soon. So this time I gave a very realistic career plan. And I was just like, you know what? I'm going to give workshops. I'm going to give talks. And there was this teacher of mine who kind of sowed the seeds of critical thinking in me. And that has led me to not only critique my artwork, but many different things in my life. And I would love to impart that to different people as well. So just such basic stuff, Ian, such basic stuff. But I realized that the second time I was being very authentic. And the first time I was probably being a bit inauthentic and trying to make myself and my choices sound a little like extra cool, basically.
Right. Yeah.
That's what it was.
Yeah.
That's what it was.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Ian, okay, no, sorry, not that. The question is, do you think a creative education is important to be a successful artist, photographer, writer, etc.? That's the first part of it, and you can also tie in. Do you think it's important to have mentors?
Right. So yeah, that's a controversial question, because for most of my photography career, I always thought I was a self-taught photographer.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of people are quite sort of arrogant about it, like, oh, self-taught.
Mm-hmm.
But nobody really teaches themselves. You pick things up from other people, but that does seem to be a kind of adjective that people throw about quite a lot. But my experience before, when I studied journalism and then ended up working as a journalist, I realized that I probably could have learned, everything in 6 months on the job anyway,
Right.
because a lot of it is common sense.
Yeah.
And so the only difference, I think, between studying something and teaching yourself or learning the longer way would be a safe place to make to make mistakes, which could essentially, to be honest, my master's year, what I loved about it is that because I just played around for a year,
Yeah.
and like I got to like draw pictures and like
I know.
take pictures about in the darkroom, and other people were doing important stuff like solving world hunger and stuff, but I was drawing pictures.
But you
And
know, Ian, I was so
so,
impressed with that because I remember, like, I didn't even know that you, and I just found out during this talk that you got back into drawing after so many years during your MA. And I remember seeing those extremely, like, you know, interesting, very successful, what do you call it, stop motion animations. That's what you'd call it, right? Kind of. They were wonderful.
yeah,
And I feel like the fact that you allowed yourself to just break free from, you know, the regimental stuff and whatever you've learned. And I think it sort of, your imagination was let loose and you came up with stuff that you might not have otherwise, which was like it's such a fantastic direction that you can take forward now, right? And you have after that with your videos and all that stuff, which we'll talk about. That's amazing.
yeah. So I think the difference there is that, you know, that studying did allow that place to make mistakes.
Yeah.
And then there's also a mentor figure, and you'll realize that, like, those you can technically find outside studying, but they are almost included in the package of studying. So I mean, you know, provided you get the right mentor or you get the right place and the right kind of ethos in a person's or in a university's curriculum. But the big thing was a mentor, you know, and I had never had that before. And I think it also ties into this masculinity question that I have been sitting with.
Right.
In my life, I've never had one either. And so there's this kind of wandering, you know, which is also maybe why I travel, you know, the intensity that I do, is that I have a lot of questions about and sort of guidance and father figures and mentors and stuff. And I did find that in two of my lectures. And
wow,
something that I want to point out, and I only thought about it after I had finished studying. But whenever we would show work, this lecturer would never say if it's good or if it's bad.
Okay.
He would just look at it, explain what it reminded him of, and we would talk about what I was feeling about it and ideas that came from it. But things never got categorized, you know, and critique is something that artists take harshly, you know.
Yeah.
Why, you know, I didn't draw since I was like 13, because it makes such an impact. And the way of not putting labels on things or not defining like your work is good or it's bad.
Exactly.
This is the work. This is a direction you could take it.
Yeah.
If it's bad, okay, because it's bad, you're just going to build onto it until it becomes something that you don't know anymore, and it becomes. I mean, you're taking it in a direction you don't know. But if you put a label on it, if you say this is good, then you're going to stop. You know, you're not going to carry on further.
Yeah.
Or if you say it's bad, you're also going to. So, to be perfectly honest with you, what my plan was to study this MA at Goldsmiths and basically take my portfolio of my masculinity project and submit that as my final project, which I had done years ago.
Yeah.
And I was just going to like have a good time.
Yeah.
You know? And I was so glad that I didn't do that. You know, that it wasn't just you know, the idea that projects can grow exponentially, and that comes from the mentor that I had, which was a very very encouraging. And like I say, you know, this can happen other ways, and like this conversations that you facilitate here, you have people talking about their processes, and I had never had that before. So technically, anybody doing is learning, you know, and I didn't have that before, and so I think I really kind of latched onto that.
That's amazing, and that just proves that if you have good teachers and mentors, they can help develop your work in amazing ways. And if you have the opposite, you know, they can move you away from a subject and they can just discourage you so much. So I'm so happy you found those great professors. You know,
it was incredible, and you know, it kind of works in the same way that we were talking about those boring desk jobs, that you almost need to have them to appreciate the freedom afterwards.
Yeah.
And you need to have those bad teachers to have a good teacher, to to remind yourself that you aren't that bad pupil in grade 8, you know. And so you need to have those difficult things to.
Yeah, yeah. So Ian, we know that while we were doing our MAs or MFAs, something terrible happened. Everything was going well till COVID-19 hit the world, and we were all just, I mean, it was probably the worst time for the entire world ever. And did that have an impact on your MA itself, but also your career moving forward? Because we're still living in a COVID world.
Yeah, that is the strange thing. And at the moment, my project is on this idea of liminal space. We can talk about it a bit later, but you know, about the fact that we are actually still in it, but some people are out of it, and it's a weird state to be in. But to go back to what you said, I think with lockdown, that I was perhaps a little bit more quick to adapt to it, and I think that is from previous stuff like a very simple life in Georgia, where I was just there to take pictures and sort of obsessed with just walking around and taking pictures, or traveling by a bicycle. So I was very aware of working with what I have and the limits. I mean, you know, don't get me wrong, COVID is horrible. I wish it never happened.
Yeah.
You know, especially doing something like a practical course where you're supposed to play around pictures and the studio and play in the darkroom and do all the stuff. Suddenly I couldn't do any of that.
Yeah.
And so that sucked. But knowing your limits and knowing that you have to work within these limits, I think I adapted to it quicker than I thought I would. And so I ended up making a darkroom in my room. And so then I started developing using this old printing technique from the 1800s that involved mixing chemicals and you know, painting with these chemicals in the dark and making these prints.
Yeah.
But none of that happened. That happened all because of sort of initiative. And then I do think something that working through COVID or through lockdown taught me was that oh man, I've forgotten now.
That's okay.
It was not waiting for inspiration, because I think usually I wait for inspiration to work, and then realizing like this is probably the worst time you're going to go through. Inspiration is just not going to happen. Like you're just going to feel miserable most of the time. And I think realizing that I couldn't wait to sort of feel good to start working on something, I just started working on something first, and I actually felt good because of that.
Awesome.
And so it wasn't. It was the other way around, and I think that was really helpful. I think usually, you know, when everything is fine, I sort of like around, do something, and then suddenly, wow, cool idea, and then I'll do that.
Yeah.
I just had to move really quickly, and to kind of make the most of that. Nanzi, my battery is dying, so I must just plug my phone in. Will you give me a minute?
Yeah. Go for it. If anyone has any questions for Ian, you can put them in this question box, which is basically the speech bubble with the question mark inside it, at the bottom left. And then we'll take the questions right in the end. don't know how to pin.
Okay, I'm almost there.
Yeah, I went through this during the first live session. I didn't even have a phone stand at that point, and I was holding it because my battery was dying, and I needed to plug the charger at the bottom. So I feel you. I'm trying to figure out how to pin my post, though. I don't know how to do that. How do you pin a post in the chat? Ian, do you know how to pin a post in the chat? It's okay, I'll figure it out. You figure out the charger.
Okay.
Yeah, we can see you.
Can you see me?
Yes, we can. Can you see me?
I can't see you.
That's weird, Ian.
Yeah, it's super weird.
Okay.
I'd like to see you. It's really nice.
So
can the people watch you?
So you still can't see me, Ian?
I still can't see you. Maybe we should ask if anybody watching if they can see you.
Guys who are watching, please can you let us know if you can see both of us, or just either one of us. But I can see you, so you can imagine this. You can imagine me there, Ian. Okay. So someone's saying yes. Fantastic. Okay.
All right. Cool.
Okay. Alex says we can see you both. Great. So Ian, basically, can you see the chat?
I can see the chat. Yeah.
Okay, but you just can't see me. That's fine. My voice is there. Okay, so Ian, has social media had an impact or aided you in your career in any way?
So I think my gut feel is that social media is perhaps a little overrated, and I mean it is helpful, but if I look at the way that it ranks images, like it can give everybody a very skewed idea of what of worth. So, for example, something like photography, which is something in a few ways actually like risked my life. Still, the most amount of likes I've ever got on Instagram is a baby picture of me and my nephew. You know, it's like there's no correlation.
Yeah.
Having said all that, I am bringing out a book, and before I did that, I had a print sale, and that couldn't have happened without social media.
Right.
So I don't think social media, and I'm just using the example of Instagram, is very out there to help artists specifically. You know, I mean, Instagram is more for influencers and famous people, and that's who the algorithm is going to serve best.
Right.
And so.
But Ian, have you ever received any projects on Instagram? Like, have you ever gotten in touch with fellow collaborators or other people who maybe offered you something in a project?
So, I mean, now would be an example of it working out.
Yeah.
You know, this is good social media, and like with selling my book and doing pre-orders, I've got people of Instagram that have offered to buy the book, and also with selling prints. You know, I've been able to do it through Instagram, or people have seen works and then they've said,
"Amazing,
I want to buy this." Or,
yeah.
So maybe I should take it back and saying, yeah, I don't think it's perhaps not overrated. I think it's a tool that needs to be used in the right way, and perhaps maybe we put a little bit too much emphasis or give it a bit too much credit. It makes more sense to be more strategic with it. So something like this
that makes sense. Right. Okay. So I feel like we've kind of answered that question, but let's relate it to how you are now. So the question is, you seem to have had a fearless attitude towards life with an inclination towards following your heart and not settling for a safe, predictable life. Is this still true for you? And can you tell us more about it?
Yeah, it's strange because I can in some ways I think I'm quite cautious, but I think I am in touch with this kind of restlessness and this idea that that if something doesn't feel right, then you need to do something about it, or try something new, or move, or necessarily stay in the right way in the same place.
Right.
And I think that drives me more than simply just doing like just epic things. Anybody can do extreme kind of things, whether that's, I don't know, bungee jumping, or going to a dangerous place, or something like that. I think the thing that forces me to do that, this curiosity and this restlessness.
Right.
So it's less about doing it to say I've done it, more about doing it because I'm drawn to it.
Right.
And there's something that.
Right. Amazing.
So yeah, like something like cycling around Africa, like it was never to beat a record, even though I did think about it. But it was more like I want a reason to be out there.
Right.
Yeah. And then find that a bit more centering.
Okay. And Ian, we spoke about the struggles many creatives have in their careers, such as questions about income versus fulfillment, creativity versus monetary stability. How do you feel about this? And how are you navigating it?
Yeah. So when you got in touch about talking, I'm actually really glad, because I think people speak about things more honestly when they're struggling with something, and this monetary versus fulfillment is something that I'm struggling with.
Yeah.
I work as a lecturer at a design college, and that I find incredibly fulfilling, but it's just not very well paid.
Right.
Right. And before I figured out that full-time existed where I was getting paid, I'd never run out of money. I was living within my needs. I wasn't necessarily being paid a lot, but
right.
But I was incredibly unfulfilled. And so I do know what I want in that fulfillment. And in the last, I don't know, 5-7 years of traveling and working on art full time, I found that that you need limits to make anything. The idea of having, if somebody tells you to write about anything, that's overwhelming.
Yeah.
To write about, then you will find something to write about. And the handy thing about art is that it does need limits, and often those limits are financial.
Yes, exactly.
So with that, you actually make a plan with these limits. And so I don't necessarily want to be rich, which is a good job. I'm an artist, but I that benefit of having some kind of limits, and I'm okay with being limited. I do have a problem though with the sort of the fairness of it. So to compare to the year that we had in the UK.
Yeah. Oh my God.
At the end, I was helping out, doing some odd jobs, and doing work that was paid a little bit above minimum wage.
Right.
But even on three days a week, I could live, and I could do projects. And so I found that was a really good balance.
Yeah.
And right now, found this balance of time. Because I'm able to make books and to bring out projects and have exhibitions,
Right.
but I'm not getting that. I haven't figured out that
balance.
Yet, you know,
Yeah.
that balance of.
Ian, I get it, and I think there are so many people here, I think all over the world, creatives who are struggling with this exact conundrum, you know? Like, I mean, they can't get into full-time jobs because then that doesn't give them the time to create. And often the part-time jobs just don't pay enough to be able to, it actually depends on where you're living in the world, to be honest. But maybe, I'm sure this is definitely it's the case with the number of my friends, and with me as well, you know, because I mean, the way I earn, for example, is by selling my artwork, and you can only have a certain number of exhibitions in a year, and even if I sell directly, you know, it's not always consistent. So it's unpredictable, and I think that's one of the challenges. What do you do when something like this is unpredictable? But what I do value is that time I get to create. Like my time is kind of my own in a way. So that struggle is such it's a very pertinent thing for a number of creatives all over the world. It's hard to find a balance.
So
yeah.
It has a lot lately, and because you are very aware of how precious the situation is, and how precious your time is.
Yeah.
Has made me a lot more selective about what I do outside work and who I hang out with, and I think a lot of people, a lot of people who might not understand the kind of the processes behind, you know, coming up with creative projects or art,
quite labor intensive.
Offended, you know.
Ian, your voice is breaking up a little bit. So I can just see you, a pixelated version of you right now.
Let me try the, shall I try the modem thing?
No, I think it's fine. Like we can still hear you properly, so that's great. Hopefully it'll become okay. Yeah. Okay, sorry, you were saying, yeah.
Recently I've been listening to this guy called Stephen Pressfield, and he's this author, he's a screenwriter, and he writes a lot about the creative process.
Okay.
And I've read one of his books. It's called The War of Art, and it talks about, you know, the idea of not sitting around and waiting for inspiration or motivation, and how, you know, the importance of having a writing routine or a, you know, creating routine, and making sense of the creative process. And so the thing that he talks about is this idea of going pro. And going pro, which he explains a lot, isn't necessarily about, if I say I want to go pro in an art sense, means now I'm earning money as an artist. It's the idea of dedicating the kind of time that you would do if you were a professional, you know, in the same way that a professional athlete has to put a certain amount of hours training and that.
Right.
And so go pro with an art, from an art point of view, is just it's looking at cutting out those less important things. And if that's if, like, you know, I've become a lot more selective about friends because my, you know, time and money is precious. And people need to understand that show up for everything. Because working on things. And so just the idea of you know, dealing with these limits and to approach it from a professional point of view means you just have to be aware of sacrifices and saying no. And while I figured out this money balance at the moment, and I have before, I mean, there have been times where I've got funding and that's helped with that, with projects, or I've been, you know, paid assignments, but you can't always control that. But you can control your time. can control who you're going to hang out with and what you're going to do for yourself.
Yeah.
And so I do, I enjoy that idea of treating it like a professional.
I see. Ian, does South Africa have artist grants? Because, like, for example, the UK has a number of them. Or
Not a
too many?
lot and I mean, if they do, maybe it's not that well advertised. I can't think of many off the top of my head. And like, speaking of grants, something that really stood out was I remember talking to an artist in the UK who was complaining that with artist grants, you have to fill in a form, then you get money. Then I just couldn't believe it.
I know.
You're just filling it, literally
Exactly.
giving money.
It's such a luxury here, even in Pakistan.
Yeah, and so
Wow.
I mean, it is something that that I should look into. The one thing is, though, with applications, it's such a lottery, and it would be the same for cheating as well. You might have a great idea, but it might also be the same idea as somebody else's, so you won't get the grants and stuff.
Yeah.
So I think it's a really good idea to apply, and I have successful grants, but I can still control my freelance work.
Yeah.
So to put things in perspective,
Yeah.
in the on my kind of business side, I'm photographing for a textbook. I photographed these images for a textbook for deaf people.
Oh.
And I've been writing insurance, which is super boring, but it pays more because it is a financial kind of publication.
Yeah.
So just like little things that I do that add up.
Yeah.
Like none of them. I've got to a point where none of them interfere with the blocked out times that I do have to work.
Excellent.
So,
excellent. Yeah. Great.
I've got the time, and I'm working on the income balance. If you don't mind, how are you finding this? I mean, it is the eternal question of like income versus fulfillment. Have you figured out how much time you need to put aside, or what is your priority? Is it making art, or is it looking at
Ian, most of my time is spent making art, and it's a labor-intensive thing, right? But I was listening to a conversation where someone was saying, I mean, that would be ideal, though. I don't know how people can achieve that. I'm sure they can. But that guy, he was actually a motivational speaker, and he was just like, you know what? You should go to work purely for the fulfillment of it, but you should be earning while you're sleeping. So that sounds like mind-blowing, but I mean, that got me thinking, that could be very interesting if I could come up with something that I enjoy doing, where I don't have to actively give like a number of hours, labor-intensive hours, in order to earn something, I don't know what that could be. Like it could be anything. But at this moment in time, I have studio hours, and I mean, I work throughout the day, so I don't have any. I work till sometimes 12 at night. I have very bad sleeping hours, so I sleep at 3:30 a.m. or something. So it's very bad. But I'm working throughout the day, and I think right now I have the luxury of doing that because I'm not like responsible for anybody. I'm just responsible for myself. So it's still easier now, but I wonder what's going to happen in the future. So it's definitely a thing on my mind. And at this moment, I am I'm thinking of different avenues where I feel fulfilled, but there's also like an income source that's sort of running in the background. And I'm just saying very abstract things right now because it's all very abstract in my mind.
It's, same with me. There's something that my mentor said, which does throw like a spanner in the works, but he said that. I always had this idea that I would do commercial photography, and with that photography, then you'll fund the fun stuff. But it doesn't necessarily work like that. So things like if you do wedding photography to fund the personal projects, you'll find that just doing wedding photography.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah.
so thing that I have noticed, you know, if I could write about things, it's almost far enough from the art that I want to make that I can, that it doesn't sort of with that.
Yes.
You know, something
that makes
that I
sense.
struggled with. I had this idea of writing a book, you know, like years ago, but I was working as a writer at the time, and because I was just writing about how to get tax and stuff, I kind of, and so ideally, I think I would want income to be slightly separate from what I do.
That makes
but,
sense.
You know,
yeah. But Ian, in South, do they pay well for writing in South Africa? Because here they pay very, very little to write.
No, they pay badly.
Yeah. Okay.
But what I have noticed is with financial writing, there's just more money because they are richer. So,
right.
So I'm hoping to do. I've literally only just started that sort of 2 weeks ago. So I am.
It'll work out, and then we'll also exchange more ideas. I mean, we can brainstorm and come up with cool stuff to do together to like increase our bank balance.
Exactly.
It sounds terrible, but like.
No, for sure.
It's a part of life.
That's why.
Yeah.
These conversations have to happen. You know, I think people need to be quite open that you don't really have a choice to be creative, and if you are, then you need to, you know, I mean, it's you know, I don't want to sound too sort of airy fairy about it, but it is a call to respond to.
Yeah.
And there are ways that other people can help people getting through that, you know, and or just learning how to ask for help. Like, I mean, with this particular insurance thing that I keep talking about, I got hold of somebody and I said, look, I know what I want to do. I know exactly how much time I need to put aside to do it. I'm unable to do it because my current job just doesn't allow me to cover it.
Yeah.
Even it's fulfilling.
Yeah.
And so I think it was being open enough about it that I managed to get this job. But I think it should become more of an accepted thing that it is difficult to you know, to follow drive. You know,
absolutely.
And help. I always tell friends or people to, like, if you've got the money and you would like art, buy your friends art.
Yeah.
You know, because you've got a friend who's an artist and they, you know, like it's a big self-worth thing if your art is being bought.
Absolutely.
Whether it's a friend or there are little ways of you know, lifting other people up.
Yeah, absolutely. Everyone who's listening, please buy your friend's art and buy our art as well. Okay, so Ian, what are some of the dreams you'd like to fulfill in your career, or even dream equipment, for example, that you may want to use?
In this lockdown period, I discovered the stop motion animation. And that was through drawing charcoal images, so hand-drawn animation.
Yeah.
And it takes forever. I find it incredibly fulfilling. It's a thing that I do, and then sort of 6 hours later, I realize I haven't, you know, like it's sort of all-consuming, in the best way possible.
Yeah.
And so there's this flow that comes out of it. And because you're drawing, you have to draw 12 images to make 1 second. So,
wow.
So it
wow.
takes forever. Because you're just throwing away so much, or you're getting rid of so many images, you get past that perfectionist thing about how the picture must be perfect.
Yeah.
So like, if I think of the art that you, like, if I had to do that, I'd just die. Because I'd be too intimidated to make one actual picture, you know, like it would just, oh man, it's got to be perfect, and it would overwhelm me.
Yeah.
But I can get rid of it and to try different things.
Yeah.
Because you have to, I find really, really exciting.
Okay.
And so to answer your question about how to have a dream or what my dream would be, would be to make a short film, like a sort of 20-minute film of in just stop motion hand-drawn animation.
Amazing.
Like they would have done in 1920.
Wow.
Right?
That's amazing, Ian.
Something like, and just to have the time, you know, just to be able to say 4 months, and it would be as simple as paying rent for 4 months and just knowing that I can sit at home and like draw. That
how long do you think this could take, like such a project?
Well, I did a music video that was about 5 minutes long, and that took about 2 months.
Oh, okay.
But
it's labor
there was
intensive.
2 months working. But it's labor that isn't really a problem. Like I do feel quite fulfilled during it, and it doesn't feel like it at all.
Yeah.
So I would imagine if you got into the flow of things, it might take about 4 months. But to show you, and it has been the sort of dream of mine. I've got pictures. I don't know if you can see there. I got pictures over there on the wall.
Yes, I can see.
And that's actually what.
Amazing.
Yeah, those are the ideas that I have.
You're planning, and so, Ian, right now you're in your studio space, right?
Yeah, kind of. Awesome. Like I say studio space, but it's just a mess.
No, it looks great. It looks great. So I'm glad you're already planning this, because now which means things will get into motion soon. So it's not something you're just dreaming about. You have like your papers on the wall, you've drawn some stuff, and it's gonna happen, Ian. I'm happy you have this plan and you're gonna execute your dream very soon. And all the best for that. Yeah.
Lots with paper, I think you've got to kind of like wilt yourself. You know, it's got to sort of stare at you, and then hopefully
it's gonna happen.
Irritates you enough that you.
And how has your experience as a teacher/lecturer been? And also, what are the important things you think that students should learn while in art school?
Well, the the important thing that I learned when I was studying, and I talk about studying the second time, doing the MA, was that the teacher wouldn't put a label on it. You know, it's not saying your work is good or it's bad,
right? But
just saying this is where it's going.
Right.
So that is a sort of habit that I have.
Excellent.
And not to just to say that work doesn't necessarily have an end. You know, like it's a starting point to something. With the idea of I don't know, just I did this TV commercial, and that happened because of, like, I would do these collages sort of late at night when I was trying to make sense of this whole pandemic thing.
Yeah.
And these collages that I started thinking about hand-drawn animation, and then I got into that, and then I did this music video with a hand-drawn animation.
Yeah.
And then through that, I an advert for Swedish TV.
Wow.
And so.
Did you say Swedish TV?
Yeah.
How cool.
Yeah.
What did you make? What was it?
So it was a stop motion animation of wine. So this wine being poured into this. It took about. It was like a 10-second animation.
Wow.
So just drawing wine, and then it changes different shapes and as it happens.
Yeah.
But what I is not knowing like how much money is in television and how much I should have charged.
Oh my god!
Because they asked for a number, and I was like £2,000. You know?
Yeah.
I just said money, and they were, so I'm sure in hindsight
they were probably very happy.
But look, in my defense, you know, it was only 10 seconds of animating.
No,
so,
that's amazing. That's great. And now you know. They have a lot of money. Oh my god, Ian. The entertainment business and television, they have a lot of money.
Should have known. But the idea is that that wouldn't have happened if you're not making these collages at like 2 in the morning.
Exactly.
And so by telling somebody that their work is bad,
Yeah.
that shuts off kind of, what's the word, exponential growth that could happen. And so something that I try to do as a lecturer is not say, I mean, I encourage people when they produce something good, but not limited by giving it a, this is good or this is bad. If it's bad, this is like,
great.
You know, this is but yeah, so that's how.
That's amazing. Yeah, that's a good point, and that's what everybody who's getting into teaching or lecturing should remember. I think the kind of, even if you're critiquing something, you shouldn't be mean about it. And art is so subjective that, you know, at the end of the day, how could one person really decide whether something is good or bad, right? I mean, I think one should really think about how they're sort of imparting knowledge or giving critique to students. It shouldn't be done without thought.
Yeah, exactly. So there's a really good book. It's called The Artist's Way, which it's like this 12-step book, looks at creativity in a more kind of rational sense. And there's this chapter on critique and how that's got to, it's not critique, it has to point at something, you know. If it's just a statement, that's nothing.
Right.
It has to, even if you're saying it's good, you have to say it's good because of this.
Exactly.
So,
exactly.
I look at your work isn't good because it's like, it's just detailed. That one of the reasons why it's good, but it's good in my opinion because it's got this uncanny feeling of something familiar. And you know, whether it is those like the money or the currency that you draw, or these fairy tale archetypes, but then look at it further, and then there's like something amiss. So it's like provocative as well.
Right.
But in a draws you into it, like it feels familiar, but now you're there, and now you're forced to think about it.
Right.
And so that
makes sense
for me. Like just saying that is more helpful than saying, oh, Shanzi does great work. You know, it's why she does good work.
Exactly. And if you're saying that, if you're critiquing something, or you're saying that this is you could do better, etc., you could tell them how they can do better. You know, what part of it isn't working.
Yeah. And the idea of saying something's good, because, you know, in this roundabout way of me complimenting you there, it's me saying why it's good, and not just all the
exactly.
I mean, I also think there's a lot of pressure to like art, and like, to be honest, like 90% of art just doesn't rock my world, and that's fine. Like it doesn't and there should be no sort of expectations that because somebody's famous you should like their work. You know, it should be able to explain it.
Exactly.
And if it doesn't, you say that, but you can't just say this sucks or this is good. You know, you should be able to say why.
True. And Ian, which qualities do you think you have that make you successful at what you do?
Where to begin?
Everything. This is the question where artists have to kind of go into their own good qualities and appreciate themselves, and go for it, Ian. You deserve it.
Wow. Well, like if I look at something like the cycle, you know, through Africa, that taught me an ability to put up with horrible circumstance or difficult circumstance. So I think very realistic perspective that life is quite hard, and that you need to be able to endure that.
Right.
And it was the same on conflict and more kind of high pressure environments. You have to just be I don't know, I find myself to endure difficult places.
Right.
And then I think the other thing is maybe be a bit more in touch with what's the word, non-verbal cues. So I work best photographing people in places where I don't speak the language,
Right.
and that is being able to read people. I think it's a subconscious. I don't think I'm physically looking out for if somebody does something that means something, but to be able to kind of respond and react around a situation, when to kind of push in and pictures, when to sort of give some space. I think not able to destabilize. I think reading a situation, I think
Right.
that helps.
Brilliant, Ian. Brilliant. And how important do you think it is to build relationships with people and network? Some people consider network to be not a very nice term,
Yeah.
but just building relationships with people in terms of your career.
So I think it makes more sense, and this is actually one of the questions that came up in the Chevening thing,
Yeah.
didn't it? Just give me a second. I want to see if I.
Yeah. I can't hear you, but sure. Battery level, I'm assuming.
Okay. Sorry about that. Can you hear me?
Yeah, yeah. Did you say something before that? Because I couldn't.
Oh no, fine. So I think with relationships, it makes sense to be strategic about it. So to form bonds in a quality over quantity perspective, not to just connect with everyone, because you have a finite amount of energy, and I think those one-on-one connections are stronger.
Right.
So any
Right.
kind of job I've got wasn't because I cold called somebody or I sent an email to an editor or something like that. It's because I know that person or the gallery owner or the curator or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if I've been recommended through somebody that I know, and I think that's why you have to look at people and just see, is this something that is going to take time? And I'm not saying like be sort of strategic and cunning and
Yeah.
not be. I just think there's some people worth connecting with, and you should focus your.
You're right, because I feel like in creative careers, especially when you need to build relationships with, for example, galleries, if you're exhibiting there, or just or people who facilitate art, or even art collectors, etc. I think it's just a part of it. Like it's something you can't necessarily escape. It also depends on what kind of creative field you're in. But for example, in the art world, and maybe for you also, because you exhibit your photographs, and maybe you will exhibit your films as well. I'm sure you will. The thing is that you can be a great artist, and no one would know about you if you don't work at these things. Or you can be great and people might know you a little bit, but if you're not actively sort of creating these networks or meeting new people and telling them about your work, they can forget about you. And that's the sad bit about this world, that it's just a part of it. And once I graduated, I remember feeling a bit like everyone from my fine art batch was a bit confused, because while Ian, can you hear me? You are not exactly there. Buffering. Okay. Let me see. Ian, can you hear me? Ian has left temporarily. He's just going to be rejoining. I think some internet connection issue. So let's just add him again to this chat. Okay. Let's see. I'm going to just Sorry. Okay. Sorry, what just happened? Ian, are you there?
There, yeah.
Okay,
So,
weirdly, I can't see you now. I can just hear you. This is so strange.
but I can see you now. You before.
So I
You're
think
not.
now what's happening is what was happening with you in the beginning, where
Should we just
you
ask
couldn't
if
see me.
should we ask if other people here can see if they can see both of us?
Other people, can you see Ian? Because I can't see him. This is funny. Should we try again?
Try again. We'll try again. So
Yeah, we'll try again. So
I'll
just
leave.
leave and I'll add you again to this. Okay. How do I add Ian? I've forgotten how to add someone. Okay, yeah. Ian. This has happened for the 6th time today's conversation. Okay. Ian, I'm trying to add you, but it suddenly says Ian isn't able to join. Okay, something's happening.
Okay.
Okay.
Good.
Great. Yay. I can see you.
Cool.
I can see you. Okay. So I was just talking about how, oh yeah, so I was saying that in art school, we were taught to look at art in a very non-commercial way and to talk about the making of the art and the concepts behind the art and how literally talking about money was a big no-no. And then we were thrown into the art world and suddenly we realized that you have to think about money. How can you survive without thinking about money? And there are a number of galleries here that are commercial in the sense that they want to sell the work so that they can run because they have to pay their own bills. So this kind of, again, I'd call it a conundrum or strange sort of parallels that run together, or even opposing ends of the spectrum where you have to think about both and yet not think about them at the same time. It's quite a struggle. So so yeah, I forgot what the question was, but I was just talking about that. Yeah, this is definitely a big confusion. You know, how do you navigate this situation where we were talking about networking? Sorry, that's what we were talking about, and that networking is just important, it seems, because it's very rare that someone kind of finds you and decides to take you on board and pushes you to work. You have to push yourself, right? There's no one else who's gonna make you do stuff.
I mean, if I think about the idea of networking, you know, there's actually no shortage of good artists, you know, and it's just people are going to ultimately choose somebody that they know. And so I remember it was this speech by Neil Gaiman, who's a writer, and he said, using the example of a writer, that if you want to get your stuff published, there are 3 things that you need to do, and that is you have to produce good work. That's one. You got to be nice and be on time.
Be nice. Oh wow!
You only need to do
I wouldn't have imagined the other 2.
And he says
that's adorable.
You only need to do 2 of them. So you can produce good work and you can be nice, and that's fine. If you're late, people will forgive you because you're nice and your work is good. You can be nice and produce good work, or you can be nice and be on time. And good, you're still nice to work with and you're on time. So I thought that was quite profound with networking. So you're not necessarily going to choose the best person. You're going to choose the person that you connect with, and you know that
exactly.
or they might be a genius, but who knows if it's going to be on time, you know? And so,
That's smart. I think I'm gonna decide to make good work and be nice, and then I don't care about like being on time, right? That's not that important. You should be fashionably late anyway.
On time. Speaking of time, you know what I've enjoyed? So I work late at night, and then I remember working late at night in London, and then sending you voice notes, and thinking,
Yeah.
you're only going to get this the next morning, and then you're getting it. You were.
I'd respond like right there because I'm up till 4 a.m. Ian. My timings are terrible, right? Probably you're like 11 or 12 or something.
Yep.
From like the world's asleep, but Chand is awake.
And so,
isn't that crazy? I'm trying to fix my routine though. I'm trying to fix it. It's not healthy, I think.
it works for you.
Actually, yeah.
But weirdly enough,
Shout out to. Sorry, go on. No, I was giving a shout out to Mariam Hina Hasnain. She was also at Goldsmith, so I was just saying hi to her. Yeah. Sorry, what were you saying?
I find it weirdly inspiring. I've got a friend of mine, and she's an artist, and I'll send her a text, and then won't hear a reply from her, or she'll be like useless in getting back to me, and I'll know it's because she's doing something amazing, or she's working late at night, and there's this cool kind of shared understanding when artists are late, because you know they're just busy, they're going through something, they're working, and I felt the same. And then I know if you're responding at 4 o'clock in the morning, it's because you've been before. And I always thought like that's only an artist knows it. Like the house market. And that's it. Yeah.
I have a different thing altogether. I'm someone who just likes to talk, and I love listening to voice notes, so I never have a problem with them. So if someone sent me a voice note, I'm not going to take too long to respond. So I'm that sort of weird person who just loves voice notes. So I'm thinking slowly and surely I'm getting my friends on board as well, which is awesome. So some people hate it because they're just like, Shantanu, we don't want to hear your voice and please stop. But others are getting on board, which is amazing. They're just like, we never did this before, but this is fun. So that's the thing. That's what it is. But Ian, coming to the exciting thing that you're working on now, can you tell us about your latest photo book and the work that is going into it or has gone into it and the premise behind it? What are you doing with it? How did it come about? Everything.
So whenever I talk about it, I talk about my latest photo book, but it's my photo book, but latest somehow sounds more classy.
Sorry, yeah, that's true.
So whenever I'm putting stuff on Instagram, my latest photo book is open.
After the 10 others you had over the last 10 years.
I strategically have it right here so I can show you.
Ooh, awesome. Show us.
So here it is over here.
Ooh, nice. I was going to read it the opposite way. Wow.
It's
That's amazing.
From film. It's entirely a film photography project. So I've got 2 cameras from the 1950s, and I've been photographing scenes and then collaging these scenes to make these imaginary landscapes. And the idea that we were talking earlier about limits and how you need limits to make to make art was with in South Africa, film developer is a little expensive, and so I found a way of mixing instant coffee and vitamin C tablets and pool cleaner and salt.
Wow.
I found this recipe online from some German dude.
That's so cool. Yeah, I was gonna ask you, did you experiment and then find like the perfect concoction, or did you like see some video or something?
I didn't do science at school, so I can't take any credit for this. So I found
how cool.
This and obviously because everything's very precise, and you know, got to be measured to the grid with the right. And so I've been doing all that in my kitchen, and I've been developing these. And the idea is to build these kind of almost post-apocalyptic scenes. So in South Africa, we have this area called the Karoo, which is like a sort of semi-desert area. And I've been photographing the kind of, whether it's ruins or open landscapes. And I've been taking pictures in London for this as well. So looking at the more futuristic buildings of like Olympic stadiums and stuff like that, and then mixing them. And so the idea is that you have this tension between the man-made objects and then nature. So I've tried to have these images where you've got nature's kind of creeping in on these scenes. So looking at this kind of tension, and a lot of that I saw when I was in Georgia, and I got quite fascinated with these ruins of communism and these ancient mansions and like crumble down almost castles. Now populated with these trees growing in them, and it's very moving looking at it. And so I've been trying to make similar images, but and the idea is showing, you know, with climate change, with our kind of, you know, the way we just overproduce and overconsume, this is either sort of a look at the future, and there's this kind of tension between our production and building and constant what's the word, consumerism, versus the overtaking it, or us overtaking nature. And so it's 113 pages of it, and like a sort of sequence. And I've had to teach myself how to design books, so looking at YouTube tutorials and working with InDesign, and just learning things about paper and how things feel, like binding techniques.
Can you show us a glimpse again, just for the people who've joined? Wow, that's amazing. It looks so cool, Ian. And Ian, can you also tell us how, if someone wants to get their hands on it, how can they do so?
Could go to my website, which is ianmcnaughtdavis.com, or my Instagram here, and then I will post you a copy. It costs $20. And I've made it like a.
That's a steal to get Ian's amazing stuff with you guys, because he's a star. Like, honestly, amazing stuff. And you've done this yourself, Ian, like the whole process of designing everything as well. Yeah, did you do that yourself?
And it's the idea is just to break even. You know, I haven't done it for, I don't know if it's a best like financial decision, but I don't think there are enough photo books. I mean, I think it's all my stuff would just end up as a file on a computer, and so I do want to have this. And in some ways, the networking thing, you know, this is like a sort of elaborate business card, you know, in that you can
makes sense.
It's a conversation starter. So
absolutely.
I have more, as much a marketing exercise as it is a creative project.
Amazing, Ian. Congratulations. That's amazing. Woohoo! Everybody please clap for Ian. Excited about this. And I would love to have a copy too. So I'm going to talk to you about that. Yes. After this. So Ian, let's move on to our rapid fire session. Okay. So rapid fire. So all you have to do is answer in either one word or one line. Okay. So these don't have to be long answers at all.
Okay, cool.
Right. Okay.
I'm nervous.
Mariam thank you for your applause. Okay. So Ian, your favorite actor / actress and movie?
Favorite actor, I would say Christopher Walken. Do you know him?
Awesome. Yes. And movie?
Because I think he's crazy.
It's great.
I saw a movie, it was called I Am Cuba, or Soy Cuba, made in the 1950s. I've only seen it lately. It's just so beautiful, so incredibly beautiful shot by some Russian.
I have never heard of that. Right. Ian, can you do a Christopher Walken impression?
What is it?
Try it. The talent. I couldn't hear you properly, but I could tell you're doing it well. Wait, say one more thing. Shanti.
Really inspired.
Bias. Awesome. Okay. If you were on the second question is, if you were on a desert island, name one person and two things you would like to take with you.
Okay, one person, I would definitely take my friend Stefan. He is a friend who I'm cycling with. And I think if you can cycle with somebody for long term, and this is like through Mozambique, we cycled together and we didn't hate each other at the end of the day. Like that was, I would take him because I think he's got a good sense of humor, and you need that for a desert island. And
you need that in life generally, period. You need that throughout life. Yeah, great.
And what to take?
Two things.
I would take, I'll tell you what I would take. I would take the animation equipment, and I would finally make my movie. I would make the dream movie. So that's what I would take.
Wow, Ian, that's hard work. That means you're a hard worker, because people would find ways to escape and you'd like use that time productively to make your movie. Wow.
I would point the peace and quiet, and yeah, I would have no obligations. That's what I do.
Brilliant. That's smart. And yeah, you'd come back with like this amazing sort of piece of work. Okay, one person, dead or alive, you'd like to take for dinner.
So I didn't know my grandfather. He died when my mother was quite young, but apparently he was very much into photography and filming, and
wow,
his hobby. And I think we all inherit traits, and so I would want to know what he's about. Yeah. So
wow, that's wonderful. Have you seen his photographs? As in photographs you've taken?
Yeah, so they're slide photographs, and they were, he was from Kenya. He grew up in Kenya. And so it's all full of like old safari pictures.
Right.
Yeah.
Amazing. That's awesome, Ian. Okay, one funny or embarrassing situation you'd like to share?
Man, like I get embarrassed on a daily basis, but there's no one
anything
sees,
at all.
No one sees. Like then I tell myself it didn't happen.
You're gonna have to now recall something.
There's a moment.
Sorry.
There's a moment that happened. Like it must have happened about maybe 7-8 years ago. That I still think about like way too often, and I cringe whenever I think about it. But I relive it with you. Sorry, this isn't a very quick answer.
No, I know that this answer can be long. It can't be like a one-liner anyway. It's okay. Go on.
Yeah, this is.
I'm so excited to hear this.
Okay, I need to set the scene. So for a magazine in Cape Town, and there's this busy intersection, and it was just outside from where I worked, and I would walk home. So I'm walking up the street, and my friend Gina, she's in a car, and she's parked at the four-way stop. And there's a traffic light, red, and she's there, and I can't really explain my thinking, but I decided it would be hilarious if I dinosaur. So I went up like a
wait. It would be.
No, it was a horrible idea. Okay, and then but I was getting because who does this? Nobody. Like T-Rexing isn't a thing that people do. But I decided this is what I'm going to do because Gina, she can take. Like she'd appreciate this, with like a. I somehow thought she might like this, and then and I really got into character. I was all like, and I had little arms, over here like a T-Rex, and I started approaching people all like close like this.
Yeah, yeah.
Her window and sort of like knock on her window, and then
Yeah.
look at Gina. Turns out it's not Gina at all.
No.
And then, but the light wouldn't go red. So I don't know how politically correct this is, but I pretended that that's how I was. So, all that thing, as if
I was gonna fall off my chair right now.
it was like an out of pretended like this is how Ian is. Carried on walking.
Did you see the woman's reaction?
Yeah, she was horrified, but then I and yeah, and it happened.
That's hilarious. That's hilarious.
Like it was definitely seen by a lot of people. And, yeah.
Never again did you decide to become a dinosaur.
That was the first line. I remember being angry for not being there. Like that it should have been someone else, you know?
Someone else. That's hilarious. Wow, Ian.
Yeah.
Okay. Great anecdote. Okay. So what time of the day are you most creative?
Oh, definitely same as you, late at night.
Yes. Yes. So I'm normal.
No, you're very normal. And so find that anything creative, you need to build up momentum to it, you know. And the idea of saying I'm going to work on a project for half an hour, it just doesn't happen. You
Doesn't.
Blocking out 4 or 5 hours for this, and for that to happen, it needs to be late at night because it just doesn't happen now, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
I do. Once you're on a roll, that you can live on like 6 hours of sleep. Like I don't think that's. I think if you're getting, and it is sustainable.
And I feel, Ian, if I ever, for example, you know, people say that, you know, just for example, if I have to go somewhere, they say, I go there, and then you can come back home for an hour work and then leave. I was like, no, I'm not going to get into that momentum. I need some time for myself. I need some time to get into the zone. And, you know, it takes a long time. It just doesn't work that way. And then I think I would need at least 2 or 3 hours after I return from somewhere to get into that work zone. So again, that's where.
I think optimal ideas is probably from like 2 o'clock to 3 o'clock, you know, in the morning. And then everything up is sort of slow, kind of leading to it. I mean, I get distracted and I do, you know, end up watching YouTube stuff, but from like
of course.
3, then you sort of hit the momentum. But you have to.
So what time do you sleep then?
So I sleep at about 3 o'clock. Yeah.
Okay. That's better than me. 1 hour better than me.
Great.
Yeah. -4. Yeah. Sucks, Ian. I'm trying to get to 3 now. 2:30 or 3. I'm trying to get there. But okay, Ian, but still I don't get to see too many mornings properly. That's the thing. Okay, advice you'd like to give your younger self?
I would say, don't be a T-Rex at traffic lights. Oh, that would be my first.
Good one.
Their advice is learn to say no earlier on in life.
Right.
Because now, when time is so precious, you know, I still struggle a lot to say no or to be selective about it. Like, I sort of on everything.
Okay.
And I think not just learn to say no, but also that you don't need to give a reason why. You can just say no. You know.
Absolutely.
Not feel.
Yeah, I think this is something I also learned a bit later in life. I used to be a little shy. I used to be a little scared of offending people. But now I value my time more, my mental health more, my energy more. And I think everyone should. And the good thing is, I think the world is becoming more aware about these things in the sense that they're encouraging each other to do so, and people are feeling a bit less offended. But earlier on, I remember, you know, it wasn't like that. we'd be like, what? Okay, Ian, what scares you?
Uh, I think I had. I mean, obviously, there's big things like mortality and that. And I think sometimes the fear of death is probably something that has probably pushed me to do things like conflict reporting. But I mean that seems like an obvious fear. I think something that I realized is that I do operate in habits, and so I had done this desk-bound job for a while, and then I had left travel and really sort of opened my eyes up, and I knew that I wanted to do photography. But then I came back and did this job basically again, and it was just writing desk-bound. I was quite angry at myself for repeating these patterns, because we just sort of operate in circles. And so I definitely took the kind of easier option with resistance because I knew it was an easy thing to do. And I do fear maybe being pushed a bit further to a point where I do that again,
Okay.
And I mean, you could have all reasons to do it. I mean, I don't have any dependents, so I'm lucky in that. So I can do kind of really looking after myself. I would want to be able to keep doing things on my own, and I think I fear taking the easy option. Yeah.
Okay. A work or project you're most proud of?
I think the part of traveling through Africa and photographing just what I wanted was cool, and I'm proud of myself there because I didn't see an end goal. It was just let me travel in weird places and photograph what I see and what I relate to. It was I didn't sort of try and fit it in with what people would want to see or read or what fits kind of the market. And I think that.
That's brilliant, Ian. What's the most special thing about South Africa?
So, at the moment I have a bit of a love-hate relationship. And the power outage, this is the first week in a long time that we've had consistent electricity, which is ridiculous, but also I'm glad. So that has made things a little difficult, and recently I'm trying to make these prints, and that's been quite hard. Finding the right equipment. But is that there is this element of recklessness and danger, not danger, but like the sort of, and you might find it in Pakistan as well. Like people just make a plan. Like if something's not working, then you adapt around. And
we call it jugaad.
What?
There's a word. It's difficult to pronounce. It's called jugaad. Jugaad, which basically means you're just finding solutions with whatever's available and just going with the flow and just getting done with it, sort of a thing. With a certain recklessness to a certain extent. I don't know if that's exactly what you're talking about, but it's very prevalent here.
We are here, and so that is something that you will have noticed didn't happen in the UK because health and safety and predictable and stuff like that does have its merits. But we never been here, and I do find it very. I do think quite stimulating. Spontaneous.
That's awesome. I think maybe I asked you this question before, but if I did, just let me know. One dream of yours. I think I did ask you this. Yeah.
So to make this movie. Yeah.
To make this movie. Woohoo! That's gonna happen. Yes.
I don't have a sort of end goal, or I don't know people who I would show it to, but I think in those hours or those weeks of just drawing, it becomes quite a meditation, and there are a lot of questions and figuring out what I want to do with my life, and this thing would kind of force me to think about it, just knowing that it's late at night and you're just drawing, and I think
Right.
it's been a amount of months, and so in a way that's sort of, it's not just making a movie, it's the therapy as well.
Absolutely. And Ian, the final question today is, what makes you truly happy?
So I think, and maybe you can relate to this as well. So this is, in any kind of project, it's about like kind of 3/4 through, where you figured it out, and you, whether that's writing a column and knowing how it's going to end, or what structure you wanted, or you're drawing something and you can see where it's going, or even like taking a photograph and knowing that you've predicted something to walk into the frame at a certain point, and you've just taken that picture. I'm less excited about the final product. I mean, like, I've got this print over here, and I'll look at it and I think that's cool. But the real kind of, the thing that makes me happy is kind of 3/4 through, where you're like, oh, this is the thing that I wanted to make, and now I've done it. I just need to finish it off. But and so creativity is this way of solving a problem that you didn't know. I mean, you didn't know. Suddenly, before it's finished, you know how it's going to end, and that for me is the thing that I'm actually most excited about. Not
Most excited about
product, knowing that, like, wow, I'm in this. I know how to get out of this. Yeah, it's almost like you're lost, and then suddenly you figure out the route over there.
Eureka moment. Yeah.
It's Eureka
Awesome,
moment.
Ian. Yeah.
And just 3 o'clock in the morning. And sometimes it's a bit sad because you can't necessarily share that with anyone, because you're just sort of like by yourself, like having that moment. But I find it very difficult to sleep after that, because I'll be so excited. I'll be like,
Right.
wow.
Do you write it down then, or do you start work immediately or something?
Well, like, it'll be during the work, so where I've almost finished something, and just kind of, you know, figured out that this is where I want it to go. So then it's quick, it happens like straight away, but it's that eureka moment. So yeah, that's
awesome, Ian. So Ian, we had a question before, but I either the person deleted it or it's gone now. But then someone says, there's one question from someone that says, ask about your photo book, but we've already discussed that. So that's awesome. Yeah, but the other question was there, and I don't know where it is now, but that's okay. So yeah, Ian, we are now at the end of the interview. Thank you so much for being here. I enjoyed every minute of it, and it's the longest one I've done, and I couldn't even tell the time basically flew. Yeah, it's been 2.5 hours. Can you imagine?
Serious? No.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's just been an hour or something, max. 2.5 hours. The time flew, didn't it? Thank you for being here and taking out so much time for this. And again, to everyone who's watching, Ian has a fantastic photo book that's out. Please visit his website or his Instagram and get in touch with him about it. He's just gonna, yeah, that's what it is. And it says Afterthought because we can see it the other way, basically. So, yeah, it says Afterthought. So Ian, thank you for being here. I'm going to be putting this up on IGTV Live. It's going to go on Instagram, and it's going to be on YouTube. So people who want on Instagram can catch it as well. And you take good care, and I hope we can have more sessions or meet each other maybe in person somewhere in the world soon.
No, I'll just come to Pakistan. It's gonna.
You must actually. I remember you did make a commitment that you're going to come here and you're going to photograph the amazing coolness, and then we'll all travel together. Because I hardly get to travel here either. So we'll do that. Okay.
All right.
Brilliant, Ian.
These conversations and all the effort that you put into it. It's very cool.
Yeah, I enjoy it. I enjoy talking to people. Thank you, Ian. Take good care, and I will see you soon. Bye. Bye.